I'm sitting here today with 6 sample bottles in front of me, thanks to the team at the Old Barrelhouse, who are the exclusive distributors of the UK independent bottler Ferg and Harris. Today, I'm going to taste and review these samples, share my thoughts, and let you know what they have to offer. Time to pour a few drams. Thank you guys for coming along and joining me today on this tasting and review of the independent bottler Ferg and Harris. Now, this is a new brand exclusively available in Australia thanks to the team at the Old Barrelhouse. Ferg and Harris is an independent bottler out of the UK that pairs exquisite whiskies with fine wood finishes. So we are getting some interesting and unique drams to try today. Founded by John Ferguson and Alex Harrison in 2021, so a relatively new brand, but I am excited because the specs and stats on the whiskies that are in front of me are everything that a whiskey enthusiast is looking for. So I've poured myself these 6 drams here, and I won't be drinking all of these. I'm going to be nosing and tasting samples and then sharing with you my favorites and just generally what I uncover. These whiskies that Ferg and Harris are releasing are some heavy hitters. We're talking, serious age statements, natural color, non-chill filtered expressions, some at cask strength, great known brands that you are probably very familiar with, but have some unique and interesting takes and additional maturations on some of our favorites. Currently, the Old Barrelhouse has about 12 different expressions, I believe, available on their site. I will add a link in the description under this video if you would like to check out expressions available to us here in Australia. And in the UK, I will also add some links to Ferg and Harris as well for audiences overseas. So I've now had these whiskey samples sitting here in front of me in these Glencairn glasses with the tasty caps on for about 15 minutes. And I'm going to go through and read to you what the samples are that we will be tasting and reviewing together today. And then we're going to go through the process and let you know exactly what I uncover. So let's begin. We'll start on your left, working your way through to the right. And the first whiskey we have in this glass here is the Craig Ellicky 15-year-old Amontillado Sherry White Port, 63.1%. This one was matured for 15 years in the Amontillado Sherry cask and then a further 3-month finish in a white port cask. The next whiskey I have here is a 12-year-old Kalila, first fill bourbon barrel maturation for the 12 years with a further 3-month maturation in the Brunello di Montalcino red wine cask. So this is an Italian Tuscan red wine, 53.3%. Then we have the Highland Park 18-year-old matured in an Oloroso sherry butt at 59.7%. So sounds amazing, right? Heading along the lineup now, I have the Bunnahabhain 14-year-old that was matured in a second fill Oloroso cask and then another finish for an additional 3 months in a Sauternes cask. This is a Moyne expression, I believe. So we're talking peated Bunnahabhain, and we are coming in at 54.7% ABV. This next one has me very intrigued. This is a Lecheg 27-year-old virgin oak for the majority of that maturation. And then we have a first fill Oloroso finish for an additional 3 months. This one I'm intrigued because whilst it's the Lecheg, apparently it is unpeated. So initially I would assume that makes it a Tobermory, but there is some variation in the way that the spirit stills are run and the cuts on a Lecheg versus Tobermory. So whilst it's not peated, it's distilled in the manner that is typical to Lecheg. And finally, on your far right, I have a sample of Linkwood Distillery, 12 years old. This was matured in a first fill bourbon barrel and then given one additional month in a virgin oak cask. And we're coming in at 55.5% ABV. So I'm going to run through the process. I'm going to work through from your left through to your right, beginning with the nose on each whiskey. Then I'm going to go through and taste each whiskey, talking to the notes that I detect on my palate. Then I will add a little bit of water in each to see how that impacts the whiskey. Let's now dive into the nosing and tasting on these wonderful Ferg Harris whiskey expressions. Beginning with the Craigellachie 15-year-old. That's so rich. Wow. Loads of oak. Beautiful underlying sweetness, this juicy red berries, but really rich, like almost like a compote, just boiled down and intensified. There's a hefty maltiness here as well, and also elements of the yeast. Aussies will know like a hint of a Vegemite note, very much a concentrated yeast. It's implying that it's going to have a saltiness to it as well. I think there's going to be a lovely contrast on this one on the palate. All right, now, why don't we nose the Caol Ila 12-year-old? First fill bourbon barrel maturation and the Tuscan red wine additional finish. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is Caol Ila unmistakably. This beautiful, light, faint smokiness and this gorgeous underlying sweetness that is so familiar on a Caol Ila. It doesn't have a heavy red wine note to it, and nor do I expect it to, because it's only a 3-month additional maturation finish in those casks. Traditional Caol Ila at 12 years old, above 50% ABV in a first fill bourbon barrel. I'm very eager to see how the finish on this one impacts the experience on the palate, because on the nose, that's just pure bourbon maturation Caol Ila. Wonderful. All right, moving on to the Highland Park 18-year-old. Matured in a Oloroso sherry butt at 59.7%. This one should offer something wonderful. Let's see. Oh, yeah, wow. 3 for 3 so far on the nose. Stunning. Beautiful concentration of these heathery, grassy, peated notes, like this, almost like a slightly dry and burnt grass. And now that's starting to dissipate. After taking the tasting cap off, I'm getting loads of that sweetness now. Toffees, sweet honey, and a touch, just a hint, a tease of smoke. Wonderful. Let's move now over to the Bunnahabhain Moyne 14-year-old. Second fill Oloroso, a Sauterne cask finish. Oh, yeah. Yeah, man, that's something. It's beautiful. Gorgeous, sweet, light, dried fruits, the sherry influence, but leaning into the tropical fruits as well. There's still more of a sweetness, but the smoke's there, It's subtle, it's inviting, it's showing a little bit of what might be to come. There's still that note. Like if you have much experience with Sauterne casks, there's, at least in my opinion, there's this, what I would attribute to almost like a hazelnut note to it that seems to be more often found than not, at least for me. And it is here present on this nosing as well. Wonderful. Over to the heavy hitter, non-peated Lecheg 27-year-old virgin oak with a final finish in the first fill Oloroso. Oh, also stunning. Treacle for days. Burnt sugar, caramelized brown sugar. This, more than any of the others I've nosed yet, is taking me back to my time on the Isle of Mull at Tobermory and that beautiful light oak note as you walk into the warehouse and you just experience the smells in the air, the aroma of the wood and the sea. This is incredible. I'm getting paper, overripe plums. Incredible. This is superb nose. This is something else, guys. I'm interested to understand what the virgin oak does on the palate, because typically you get a spiciness from the virgin oak, but potentially after the 27 years in maturation, that's tamed down. You will not suspect it on the nose. This is so subtle, delicate, gentle, unassuming, but inviting, engaging. Wonderful. My favorite so far on the nose. That is truly something special. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. You can't have whiskey. My cat is meowing at me. I don't know if she's nosing these as well as I am. And if she's experiencing what I am, she's probably having a wonderful time on the chair over there. I cannot right now. I am doing a video. Okay, I have to do this. You can have your input on the next one, okay? Okay, now that brings me to the final whiskey in the lineup here on your far right, and we are now going to nose the Linkwood 12-year-old. This is a first fill bourbon maturation followed by an additional month in virgin oak, 55.5% ABV. Let's see what it has to offer. Loads of tropical fruit. Then it shifted into spearmint. And then that's just wafted away. Now we're getting different tropical fruits. I'm trying to pinpoint it. It's tropical fruits, but variations and changes. Perhaps jackfruit? A sticky combination between a mango and a banana. Loads of that here. Very pleasant. This one too is engaging. I'm extremely impressed. I don't know if it was strategic which expressions the Old Barrelhouse has sent to me of these Ferg Harris expressions to try. But if they are all like this, a wonderful first impression. Wonderful. All of these are truly beautiful, beautiful aromas that I'm experiencing. So I'm going to go back now and work my way through again from your left to the right, and we're going to taste on my palate. So I'm going to clear my palate with some water first, try these all neat as they are, and add water and do a second round through again. Okay, starting now with the Craigellachie 15-year-old. Lovely. 63.1%. So this one's going to be a lot. Let's little sip and let's see. Very similar to what I'm getting on the nose, but far too high in ABV. Needs some water. I'm going to add some water before I give an impression of what this whiskey is showing me. I do not want to burn out my palate. This cap is about 5 mils of water. Potentially may need another 5 mils. Let's see. Hasn't had too much of an impact on the nose. Very much still that deep, intense concentration of the sweet red fruits combined with the yeast concentration, the Vegemite note. It has a similarity if you've ever tried Lecheg Rioja cask, but not as sweet. There's an adjacency. I feel like there's some similarity there to give you an idea. Okay, let's try again now on the palate after the addition of about 5 mils of water. Oh, much better. Opening up now, floral notes. There's almost elements of sage. I'm getting plain flower. I get touches of lavender. There's a bitterness on the mid palate, easing into the back of my palate, finishing slightly dry, very long finish, really carrying a bitterness on this one. Whether that's a impact from the Amontillado or the white port, I can't say, but this one would definitely appeal more to someone who enjoys a whiskey that has a bit more of a savory umami type note to it. This definitely falls in that realm. Interesting, a lot going on, plenty to pull apart. Leaving, it's still going. It's still going. And now towards the front of my palate is starting to become more like caramel, sticky toffee. Much more sweetness now that the intensity, the savory, the bitterness has subsided. And now the sweetness. This is one that I think you would quite comfortably spend a long time sitting with. Give it a lot more time in the glass just to see what unfolds. A lot going on here. Wonderfully complex. Okay, let's move on now. We have cleared my palate and I am moving to the Kalila 12 with the Brunello di Montalcino. Apologies if I've butchered that. This is the finish in the Tuscan red wine cask. 53.3%. Let's try on the palate. Beautiful stuff. The sweetness, the vanillas from the bourbon cask, and then the smoke that you expect. Kalila for me always presents as a campfire smoke, an ashy smoke, not a sort of medicinal Lafroig type experience. It's always very much like a clean smoke to me. I'm really having difficulty detecting the influence of the Tuscan wine cask. Nothing wrong with it at all, but to me definitely just tastes like a really rock solid Kalila. Beautiful stuff, just great whiskey. This one doesn't feel like it gives you anything more from that additional maturation, so I'd be eager to see what this could have become, or perhaps what this whiskey was before that additional maturation. How has this impacted the whiskey? I can't get enough of a sense of what it brings to the table. Okay, now we are moving into the Highland Park 18-year-old. Oloroso Sherry Butt Maturation, 59.7% ABV. Small sip on the palate, and then we'll add some water to this one as we're just shy of 60%. Oh, different. Definitely want some water. It's tight, if that makes sense. It needs the water. It needs to shake things up a little. I'm only getting a slight sense of what it has to offer. The grassy note is very obvious. Now, slight, gentle smokiness. Not a peat note, just smoke and quintessential honey notes of a Highland Park. Let me add a little bit of water. I'm going to do again. I'm going to run at about 5 mils. Very scientific, I know, but I have measured this prior. I use these water bottles all the time. Let's give this a bit of a swirl, a bit of love. After the addition of water, let's try the Highland Park 18 on my palate. Very pleasing. This one is nowhere near as complex as the Craigellachie. It probably sits somewhere in between what the Kalila offers and what the Craigellachie offers. What I'm getting is the same as I got on the nose, same as I got on the initial sip on my palate, but it's just made it more comfortable. It's taken off the edge a little bit with the addition of water and just enhanced the aromas that are coming off the glass. What I will say is if you are a Highland Park fan, a collector, an enthusiast, you would absolutely be satisfied well and truly with this Ferg Harris expression. Okay, halfway. The Bunnahabhain Moyne, peated Bunnahabhain, second fill Oloroso, finish in the Sauterne casks, 54.7% on the palate. Ah, yeah, okay. This is cool. Complete different experience on the nose and on the palate. As soon as it lands on your palate, you are very aware that it is a peated expression of Bunnahabhain. I'm going to add some water to this as well. At 54.7, it's easy on the palate, but I want to see what it uncovers because it's a little hidden under the smoke. So I want to see what I can bring out of the whiskey with a little bit of water. I will do another full cap, 5 mils. Interesting that it's so much smoke on the palate, and not in the sense that it's overwhelming, but it's overshadowing the other elements. I'm getting, it feels like there's ash sitting on my tongue right now. What's fascinating with peated whiskies is how they react with water. Sometimes it brings out more peat, other times it sort of dilutes it down. With this instance, this expression, it brought more of the peat, more of the smokiness to the nose. Okay, on the palate now with the water. More well-rounded, but I will say I am more of a fan of Bunnahabhain being unpeated. I enjoy this Bunnahabhain, but I don't love it. It's kind of lost a little bit of its charm. The nose was very pleasing. Once I added the water, it's just brought more of the ash and the smokiness out, and it started to twist into too one-dimensional for me. So between this and the Kalila, I prefer the Kalila. over the Bunnahabhain. Probably at this stage, my least favorite in the lineup so far. All right, now this is one that I've very much had my eye on the whole time, excited for what this whiskey may offer. 27-year-old Lecheg, non-peated, entirely matured in virgin oak, except for 3 months in the first fill Oloroso, 47.2%, so shouldn't need water, but let's see what it's like on the palate. Oh, okay. Different. The virgin oak is absolutely present. It has that spicy little bite to it. If you are familiar with the impact of a virgin oak cask, it's here, absolutely, undeniably. It's an interesting combination of sweetness at the back of my palate, saltiness at the tip of my tongue, a little bit of sourness on the sides of my tongue. The virgin oak spiciness almost could be mistaken for peat and smoke, right? Now, if you did a peated Lecheg in the traditional sense in a virgin oak cask, I would suggest it would be overpowering. It'd be too much. It'd be too intense. They wouldn't complement each other well. Let me try again on the palate. I might add a little bit of water. I just want to see how this one responds to the water with a lower ABV. I'm going to do the same 5 mils just for continuity, and let's see how much it makes an impact on a whiskey that's already only 47.2%. Okay. The water helps with the balance between the flavors that you experience. This one, I think, would require some experimentation, playing with the water levels, because whilst it's given a better experience for me personally in my palate, it's toned down that overly spicy virgin oak, and that's potentially a feature that some people do chase, right? We all have different palates. The water has made this much more enjoyable in balancing out that intensity, but it's lost a bit in the texture. It hasn't ruined the whiskey, and that's probably too harsh a word, but for want of a better term, but you would need to get the right ratio of water, I believe. So the nose is much more enticing than the palate, but still absolutely a quality, well-crafted whiskey. Okay, it's a good thing that we've made it across now to the final whiskey in today's tasting and review of the expressions coming from Ferg and Harris. The small samples of this is a lot of whiskey, just tasting and getting to know these at such high strength. So I think it's important to always remember, please enjoy your whiskey responsibly. First and foremost, I am not going to sit here and finish every single drop of all these whiskeys. Let's now move on to the final whiskey in the lineup, being the Linkwood 12-year-old. This one here is a first fill bourbon maturation with a finish in the virgin oak for a month. We are talking 55.5% ABV, so let's try this on the palate neat, and then I will add some water as well. Oh, yeah. I like that. Interesting. Definitely needs water as well. On my whiskey journey, I'm starting to see very much it's not about trying to drink the strongest whiskey that you can. It's about allowing yourself to begin to understand the whiskey at its fullest strength, but then experimenting, playing with the water. Oh, gorgeous. Sorry guys, that just came in beautifully. Wow. There's this vegetable note under this that is almost a combination of this beautiful sweetness combined with cooked spinach. And it works. Wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Back of my palate, just singing. Lovely. That's when you know whiskey is good, right? When it stops you in your tracks. This one here, I will add some water as well. I'm hoping delivers on what it's hinted at. Let that water and whiskey combined, and let's see now what the linkwood offers on my palate. Very pleasant. Oh, this one has probably been my favorite in terms of the ratio of water to whiskey. If I'm going at a level cap full of water in each of these whiskeys at 55.5% ABV with that amount of water, for my palate, this just sings. Perfect balance of not losing the oiliness. It has the sweetness. It didn't diminish the flavors. It enhanced them. The only thing this linkwood expression lacks is length of finish. Finish is a little too short, but quite possibly one of my favorites of the lineup. Just a little bit different, a little bit unexpected. There's a very fascinating combination here that just really works, and in the right ratios. It's just unique. Cooked vegetables and sweet stone fruit and a lovely mix underneath that of a touch of malt and a touch of oak. This is a good example of when a additional maturation with the virgin oak has given it a little bit of a sprinkle of magic, right? You're getting just that little tiny bite, the little hint of spice that gives it more complexity without overpowering it or being overbearing. It's like nosing bananas and spinach. Wonderful. Different. Wonderful and different, right? It's very clear to me after going through these whiskies that what Ferg Harris are doing, and by extension what the Old Barrelhouse are doing by making these whiskies available to us, they're absolutely bottling for enthusiasts and whiskey lovers like us. Each one of these is obviously well crafted. To me, above and beyond, the nose on every one of these whiskies was superb. If you're somebody who enjoys sitting with a whiskey, getting to know it before you taste it for an hour or so, sometimes I'll do that. The journey that this whiskey can take you on purely from the aromas that each of these presents to you, these I cannot recommend enough purely for the nosing experience. They're wonderful, absolutely wonderful. In terms of, what was the best whiskey or the standout for me, I think I'm very, very impressed with the Craigellachie 15-year-old, the Amontillado Sherry with the white port finish. Complexity for days. I lean into sweet and peat, but this one had the most to offer in terms of if I wanted to really geek out and unpack a whiskey and start to pull it apart. I'd say this is probably at that higher end of how I would rate them. If I had to recommend one to you as the viewer, right, I would probably say the one that would please most people, hands down, the Highland Park 18-year-old full maturation in an Oloroso sherry, but a wonderful, wonderful Highland Park. You cannot fault it. It's just exactly what you're wanting from a Highland Park IB. I'm sure if you're a Highland Park fan, you would not be disappointed with this. In terms of the nose, for me, it's a sort of toss-up between the Bunnahabhain Moyne 14-year-old second fill Oloroso, sorry, with the Sauternes finish. The nose on that is just lovely, but for me, the palate was a little too much of the smoke. And I very much enjoyed the linkwood, was unique and intriguing. You can't fault the Kalila. Just, you know, if you want a quintessential Kalila, this is it. But a wonderful lineup. I'm very thankful that I've been able to experience Ferg Harris. I'm not sure how big and well known they are in the UK, but I've had some IBs that are nowhere near as impressive as these. These guys are clearly bottling whiskey that they genuinely believe in and have put their credentials behind, because all 6 of these are great whiskies. Thank you very much for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you would like to get your hands on some Ferg Harris, jump down into the description on this video. I'll provide some links for you to check them out, and make sure, if you're a whiskey lover like I'm sure you are, sign up to the Single Malt Monthly newsletter, and you will get great whiskey content, including food pairings, competitions, special offerings for whiskey lovers, exclusive to you guys. So thank you very much. I look forward to the next tasting and review with you. Until next time, enjoy your whiskey responsibly.